Here we are with the next episode of the Movement Prescription, right slap bang in the middle of the Olympics as we go to record. And I'm absolutely delighted today to have an elite rower and also medical doctor, Dr. Polly Swan, with me on this episode. Hi, Polly.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we could not have picked a better date for recording this podcast episode today, Polly, because the rowers have been on form today. Have you been watching?
Oh, I have actually. I've been quite lucky. I've been doing a little bit of sports punditry this morning. So my nerves have just about settled from watching the women's four get an amazing silver medal. A particular favourite was the women's double, who were outside chances, but they've got a bronze medal. So the medals just keep coming on in this Paris Games. So yeah, what a day.
Absolutely brilliant. So listen, Polly, I'm delighted to bring you onto the Movement Prescription podcast today. And whilst we're all about trying to get movement for all, I wanted to bring you in because you've got this unique combination of being an elite rower, being a medical doctor. And I know that you also have a passion for keeping the legacy going. And I want to talk a little bit more about that later on. But I wonder if you would like to introduce yourself. I've looked at your incredible background and you have been to so many events, and I don't think you can sort of sum it up in one. If you were to do your elevator speech, what would you include, Polly?
Oh man,
put you on the spot there.
You're putting me on the spot here. Okay, so how would I describe myself? So my name's Polly. My name's Polly Swan. I took 13 whole years to complete my medical degree at Edinburgh University. And the reason for that was because I went to the 2016 Olympic Games, where I won a historic silver medal in the women's 8. And then went back to finish off my medical degree and thought that, well, one Olympic Games is probably not enough. And during my final year, started training again towards the Olympics, where I represented Team GB at the Tokyo 2021 Games with Helen Glover at the women's pair. I've since put aside the rowing and I'm currently a core trainee in Edinburgh.
What an incredible summary that you've given us there. And I wonder, when I was reading about how long it took you to do a medical degree, has anybody beat you on that endurance event of studying medicine?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm not sure. I feel like maybe a couple of rugby players, but it's a pretty long time. You know, I really strung it out. I just had a lot of things to do, you know. No, I was very, very lucky. It was back in 2010 that I took some time out. I was 22, and I was a very outside chance at getting into the team for the Olympics in London. Sadly, I missed out because I had a back injury at the time. But yeah, the university were incredible and kept letting me take more and more time. And I feel very indebted. There's my personal mentor and personal tutor was Dr. Fanny Christmundisdottir, who basically completely overhauled Edinburgh University's rules to allow me, little old me, to keep going and following my Olympic dreams. So yeah, I was very, very lucky, I think, having so much support from her and also the rest of Edinburgh University. But it did take a long time.
Do you know, I've got such a massive smile on my face because I've got such fabulous memories of Dr. Fanny Christmundisdottir. That's so good to hear that you had an advocate that literally turned things inside out for you.
Yeah, I honestly so lucky to have her. From day one of university, she was my personal tutor, and I must have lucked out because she was so influential in helping me sort of navigate trying to forge a sporting career and also a medical career. So yeah, she's quite a force to be reckoned with, is Dr. Christmundisdottir, but I'm very thankful to have met her.
I do remember, actually. Was she in any way sporty? I'm wondering what drove her, because that can't have been easy to navigate, you know, changing the rules. And, you know, Edinburgh's quite a traditional place, isn't it?
Yeah. So, do you know what? I actually don't know. I'm going to have to ask her. I'll let her know that we've talked about her. And I'll have to ask. I think she was very passionate about supporting people, not, just supporting people's dreams and realizing that medicine is a lifelong vocation, and other things are important too. So I just think she could see the wider picture, and she was a great advocate. But yeah, no, I'll have to ask her about the sporting one. I'm not sure about that.
And I wonder, did she have anything to do? I don't remember where I saw this, but I understand that you were the first matriculated student to enter the University of Edinburgh Sports Hall of Fame. Is that right? In 2017?
Oh yeah, I was. Yeah. Oh, that was such an honour. That was after the Rio Olympic Games, and come back after my 6-year hiatus, and started. I don't think I could remember the right side of a patient to stand on. I think a lot of that was driven from the sporting side of things, but I'm sure Fanny had her words to say for sure.
And how was that coming back in with a whole new intake of medical students? Or did you come in at the point where other people had maybe intercalated and was it sort of an easier time to come in?
It was really strange, to be honest. I think I knew one person in my year, and that was only because I had rowed with her brother. So, they were all a lot younger than me, and I felt, you take I'd done a bit of reading to try and prep myself coming back, but you come back into medical school, and I suppose I was lucky in some ways. They asked me to basically start clinical medicine again, and I think that was right to do because I'd had such a long break. But really, I mean, I remember sitting in this. My first rotation was a general surgical rotation at the Royal in Edinburgh. And I remember sitting in an MDT meeting, and they were using all these 3-letter acronyms, and I had a little notebook, and I had to write them all down because I couldn't remember what they all meant. I just remember the first day back, coming home and just crying. Like, what have you got yourself in for here? But you soon find your feet, and actually, it was funny coming back in terms of my academics. I think I was just a bit less of a young, silly girl and a bit more savvy, and I came back because I wanted to be a doctor. I came back because I knew that was also a lifelong passion. So I think I just had a little bit more, I don't know, kind of awareness about how to learn and how to progress, and an interest in the topic, actually. Whereas I think when you're an 18-year-old thrown out of school and into medical school, sometimes it's a bit too much of a whirlwind. So in some ways, I'm quite grateful that I had that length of time to go and play at sport and then come back and actually be really passionate about my career.
That's. I'm just making notes here about your 2 lifelong passions. What a lovely way to talk about medicine, because I things are hard in medicine, aren't they? And it can be difficult, I think, for people to maintain that love of our vocation. And I think particularly now in surgical careers and general practice careers, I was just hearing about BMA England and GP working to rule, or whatever it is that's happening down there at the moment. And I think it's so easy to become disillusioned with where we all go in with this lifelong passion. How have you kept that going?
Oh, I don't think I have kept it going. I mean, it's like a roller coaster I'm the same as everyone else. I'm just as disillusioned. We had our new FY1s come into the ward the other day, and it was so exciting. They were all kind of fizzing, being let loose on the ward, and kind of really green behind the ears, but also just that kind of anticipation of what was to come in front of them. And it was really nice to see. And I think I'd just done a long stretch of on calls, and I was a bit tired, I was a bit grumpy, and it was nice to actually see that moment and see how excited they are about being new doctors. It is an honour what we get to do. I sort of sometimes pinch myself. Obviously in my field, I'm very junior as a surgical trainee, but it's a real honour to be allowed to operate on people. And for me, if it's like a little abscess or taking someone's fingernail off, I get to do that independently. And sometimes I forget to tell myself, Polly, look how far you've come. You get to actually do these things on your own. Someone's allowing you to do these things. And, I think with medicine, there's so much progression in everyone's career. We're always learning. We're always thinking about new ways to be better. And again, that's such an honour. What other career allows you to do that? And so I think sometimes you just need those pinch me moments to be like, okay, yes, you're tired, and yes, you're probably underpaid and overworked, and you've probably sacrificed lots and lots and lots to be here, but that is for a reason. And yeah, I mean, I'd rather do that than sell my soul to the city or something. So I'm sure that's why we're all still here.
Do you know, I could replay that whole section that you've just said and apply it to either medicine or to sport. Do you see those parallels time and time again?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. There's a lot of sacrifice, isn't there, in medicine or sports? There's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of commitment. But in my mind, it always pays off. And I think maybe sometimes I need to make myself stop and slow down and say no. I think we were talking about that earlier before we started recording. Let's learn how to say no.
So, Polly, we've talked a little bit about medicine and rowing at the bit where you're famous, but I want to know a bit more about before and your journey to that point. So, do you think that you found rowing, or that rowing found you?
Rowing absolutely found me. I don't think I really knew anything about rowing when I was younger. So I probably started around about 2002. And this very scary but very small physics teacher came up to me in the playground at school and said, "Right, young lady, you're very tall, so you'll be going rowing in the winter term." And you know, I was mostly terrified, but thought, well, I'm quite rubbish at hockey, so yeah, I'll give it a go. So dutifully, I wore my hockey skirt to the first rowing lesson that we ever had, and the skirts get stuck in the runners, so that was a completely stupid idea. But I so vividly remember that first session, that first opportunity to sit in a boat, and I was completely hooked. And I don't know what it is about rowing. You know, you have to train all the time. It's really quite painful. You sacrifice loads of things. You know, you don't go to weddings and birthdays and funerals. But I was just hooked day one. I loved it. And I think for me, it's probably because it's, in my mind, the ultimate team sport. And the people that you meet along the way, the experiences that you have together, the emotions that you share together is kind of what makes the sport and what makes me love it so much. So yeah, it definitely found me. I had no idea about rowing, and I'm very grateful for that moment. I'm very grateful. It's Mr. Neil, who's sadly the late Mr. Neil, but I owe my entire rowing career to him.
Was he by any chance a Cox previously?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
How did I guess? Cox, it was just it's the way you emphasised very small and very scary. And to me, in my mind, I remember watching my brother, he did rowing at university, and I went to watch a lot of his rowing races, and I just remember being petrified of the Coxes.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely terrifying. They're all really shouty and sort of they're the perfect leaders. They're exactly what you want, and it's so funny. You see them around the rowing events. You know, they've got all these sort of 6 foot Glamazonian women around them, and they're actually this tiny little 5'1" Cox is ordering them around, and we all just kowtow. It's fine.
So that's really interesting. You were hooked from the first session, despite the hockey skirt nightmare fiasco. What do you think of that you owed to being in the great outdoors? I'm a massive advocate for getting moving outdoors. Whatever you love, do it, and then do it loads.
I think for me, being outside for sport, no question, you know, it's what makes me feel happy. You know, that kind of deep inner happiness and that sense of healthiness is intrinsically linked to being outside. You know, I would always choose to run outside rather than on the treadmill, to you know, go and go for a nice cycle with some friends, and that's the same in rowing. And there's this really special thing about rowing that obviously you're strapped into a boat physically. You each have an oar. You have to move in perfect synchronicity. And when you get it right, there's something fantastic about being outside, hopefully in the sunshine. You know, if it's a crystal clear, the water is trickling past you, you get all those kind of emotions of being a team, but also the kind of like the feeling of movement and being a lot of people talk about like being in the zone or in flow, and you get that state in rowing, and yeah, being in some beautiful sort of lake, ideally in France or something, is what it's all about. But to be honest, I was on a canal in the middle of Edinburgh, and there's a shopping trolley going past me. So it doesn't. It's just outside is great, really, isn't it? I think it just gives you more endorphins, and it just makes you feel better, in my mind.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of getting out and being near any body of water. And there's some beautiful spots on that canal, as well as the fairly grotty parts. I suspect you saw them all, and everything that went with it.
I did. Many times, up and down. Yeah, I went to every point.
Did you have to do much? You said that you'd rather obviously run outside than be on a treadmill, and the same probably went for being in the boat rather than. I hope I have the right word. Being on the erg. Is that right? Got the right word?
Yes, it's on an ergo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a rowing machine, but ergo, yeah, it's perfect. That's the lingo.
And so did you, I mean, I'm going back now. I know I'm going backwards and forwards, but I'm thinking of, fast forward to you during the pandemic, thinking, right, I'm going to go for 2021. Where did you do your training then? And how on earth did you manage that?
So I did quite a mix. I actually started working. There was these posts that came up during COVID times, the foundation year interim doctors, and I decided that to apply for one of those. And if I got the job, then I would go and do some work. And if I didn't, then fine. And I guess we all were in such a strange place, weren't we? We didn't know how long COVID was going to last for. We didn't know how long lockdowns were going to be. I didn't know if there was going to be an Olympic Games that cycle, or if it would all just get cancelled. So in terms of my training, it was a real mishmash. I actually used to cycle. So I was living in Edinburgh. I sort of hot-footed it up from Henley-on-Thames, which is where I was where I was living and training towards the Tokyo Games. As soon as Boris made his announcement, got in the car, drove as fast as possible to get home, stayed with my family for the first lockdown, and it was a combination of cycling to and from Livingston, which is about an hour to get there, an hour to get back, and then just training either in the garden, in the living room, in my mum and dad's shed, because I had a bike in there, it's like stationary bike. We had the rowing machine in the hallway, out in the garden. We just were kind of resourceful and tried to create training spaces where there might not have been one before. It was a very strange time. But actually getting into the routine of that, I suppose it was a different time, wasn't it? Everyone had so much time if they weren't working. So yeah, trying to sort of on my off days, all I'd have to do is train. Just train and eat and train. It was quite a lonely affair though, which was odd, very odd. And you're sort of training towards something you don't know if it's going to happen. Is this Olympics going to ever exist? So yeah, that was an odd time, but I'm thankful for having that training, because I think a lot of people struggled in lockdown. A lot of people just couldn't quite, I think for people's mental health, it was not good. So I'm very grateful to have had a focus and something that I could, structure my day with.
I mean, two things I want to pick up from that. One is what a great way to do the active commute. I mean, I've never heard of anyone training for the Olympics doing the active commute, but that's brilliant, because I'm, again, a massive fan of making your commute useful to you in terms of movement. And the other thing was, you said when you were talking about creating training spaces. I presume that your family were a huge support.
Yeah, although I think there's some great footage that I have of me doing some weight training in the garden and my mum getting really annoyed because she's watering the plants. But yeah, I mean, it was a family affair. I was lent some equipment very kindly from the Edinburgh University Boat Club. and actually some personal equipment from my old rowing coach, Colin Williamson. So we would just set up a training space kind of where it was least annoying. And yeah, I feel very lucky for that time because, it would have been very lonely and very boring, but my mum would come and do some sessions. I was so impressed with her. She's in her 60s and there she was trying to match a GB Olympian at doing her core exercises, and I just think the kind of incredible support that I had from, my mum, my dad, my family, everybody at Edinburgh University during that time, just to make my training load that little bit easier. I'm so grateful for that time, and yeah, it's certainly made that lockdown period a lot easier.
It's incredible. Do you know, I love your approach to that, and you for that period were paired with Helen Glover, who you'd rowed with her before, hadn't you?
Well, actually, during lockdown, I wasn't. So Helen Glover only started training as a comeback during the lockdown period. So at that point in time, nobody knew that Helen was coming back and going to try and make a bid for the Tokyo Olympic Games. So that was all done under secrecy, which I just think is great. And to have somebody who's gone away, had 3 children, and then decided to take an opportunity that sort of a lockdown gives us to train and see if she could get back into the team. Just what an inspiration. During that time, no one had any idea that Helen was doing rowing machines, doing ergos in the garden.
That's amazing. I love what I believe she said, and I'm going to read this out here. And I think I heard her say something very similar today, because they've had success today again, haven't they? And she said something.
Yes, they won a silver medal today.
Oh, you must have been screaming your heart out, were you?
Yeah, I was. And the race itself was just so exciting. I even shed a few tears. It was a very special moment.
And when you guys had rowed in Tokyo, she said the reward is knowing that we crossed the line, giving it our all. The frustration would have been coming away from it, thinking we had more, but we didn't. Did she say that?
Yeah, she did, and I completely agree with that. It was a difficult period coming up to the Tokyo Olympics. I'd been unwell. I'd had overtraining syndrome, which is something that a lot of female athletes seem to go through, and it's very difficult to kind of recover from. And unfortunately, had to take 2 months out of training completely during the Olympic year. And then, of course, Helen had come back, made her big comeback from the Rio Olympic Games, and had only really been training for 9 months before we went and raced in Olympics. So in some ways we had no right to be in an Olympic final, and we had no right to be vying for medal spots. But I think she's absolutely right. We gave it our all, and in sport that's all you can really ask. You can't ask for more than that. And I think we lose sight sometimes. We expect Team GB always to win gold. We expect them to be fantastic always, but the rest of the world is fantastic, and everyone has their own story, and just being on that stage full stop is such an honour. So I'm very proud of the result that I managed to achieve with Helen in Tokyo, and I think that sentiment of you have to leave it all on the line and just do your best, and you can ask for no more.
Incredible, Polly. Which brings us on so nicely to the third thing that I wanted to talk about, which was Olympic legacy. I think it's in the rule book actually is that the goal for the Olympics is about promoting a peaceful society and all the rest of it. But what does Olympic legacy mean to you, Polly?
Yeah, it is. There's a lot that is said about Olympic legacy. It's important when they're building all the stadiums and venues that there's something left for people. And in some ways, that's more important than the actual Olympics. It's how it makes people feel. It's how it changes people's lives, and hopefully makes them choose to step out of themselves and then maybe try a sport that they would never have thought that they were interested in trying before. I think something that I have noticed over the last few years since I've retired is that there's still that ongoing legacy, and it's something I'm very passionate about, is getting young, for me, mostly young women into sport so that they can grow in confidence and self-belief through exercise. And for me, it's not about always achieving your best, at a Olympic Games or World Championship level. It's just about making that first step and seeing where a sport could take you. And in Britain, I think we're very lucky. We have the support of the lottery that puts a lot of money into grassroots sport, and I think that is as athletes, our Olympic legacy. We can, yes, we are maybe at the top end, the pinnacle of the sport, but you get there through grassroots sport, and through clubs, and through a little 11-year-old being told in the playground that maybe she should try this sport and see if she enjoys it. So for me, that's what sport's about. It's about inspiring people who may never have thought about getting in a boat, putting some trainers on. What could they achieve, and is it for health and happiness? That's probably more important than performance and results.
So well said, Polly. And I know that you went to the University of St Andrews, didn't you? And you did a TED talk there. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I did. I was really, considering that I've been to 2 Olympic Games, I was really nervous to do my first TEDx talk. But they're really a special events, and I would really recommend to anybody who has the opportunity to go or listen to TEDx talks. I just think that they offer such a great perspective. Every person there had their own story, and what was really interesting was that there was almost a theme to the event where incredibly successful people all admitted to having a huge amount of self-doubt and kind of negative self-talk. So they had to battle that within their day-to-day lives in order to gain the success, whether that was in business, the arts, or in sport. And I thought that was such an interesting theme, and it wasn't planned at all. It's just we were all offered to come and talk and on a topic that we were passionate about, and it all just came out of the woodwork that every single person who has been successful in their lives battles with this inner thought that, what if I'm not good enough, or what if I can't do that? And I think that's something that's probably true of medicine. I think, we have incredibly high pressure jobs. We all have moments in our career where we think, oh my goodness, what happens if this goes wrong? Or have I made the wrong decision? Or, have I done the wrong thing? But the important thing is just to keep taking those steps forward and keep learning from anything, those experiences. For me, obviously I enjoyed delivering my talk, but actually for me, it was more listening to the other talks that I found so interesting and inspiring.
And that it's a brilliant talk, Polly, because I did have a look at that before we spoke, and I think you spoke brilliantly about your feelings on the start line, and I would encourage anyone to go and watch that as well, because if you don't mind me just plugging your TEDx talk on YouTube there, but I thought it was brilliant. Listen, I could talk to you all day, but we're getting all
Thanks
sorts
very much. That's very sweet.
I'll get in all sorts of trouble from our editor, Chris, if I talk for an hour like I normally do. Polly, you have said so many incredible things and made so many links between your life as a sportswoman and your life as a medic. My last question to you is, how can we as doctors, and this is what the movement prescription is all about, how can we as doctors deliver the message of physical activity for all the benefits? And you mentioned a couple of them just there, and getting outdoors. How can we do this in modern day medicine? Because things have got to change in the NHS, and to keep our passion alive and that vocation and that lifelong passion for medicine and healing and all the rest. Have you had any thoughts on that?
I just think it's such a good question. I think we have to start at the beginning, don't we? We need to start teaching our medical students the importance of being outside, of exercise. And we know it intrinsically. We know that movement and exercise is good for us, but we need to start thinking of it as something that is a treatment, because undoubtedly it is. We know we can reverse diabetes, type 2 diabetes, with exercise and diet. It has been proven, and yet I think it's skimmed over. We're too focused maybe on learning about pharmacology and not really understanding the benefits of really good exercise and getting outside. And we are in a mental health crisis within our country, and I think that, it's being outside and having sport has been transformative for my mental health, and I'm sure there are many others that would agree with me. So I think we do need to start in medical school, keep going with training, and having that, when we teach our doctors, when we teach our trainees, that this is something we need to discuss with our patients. And it is a difficult conversation to have. It's much easier to say, here's a prescription for a medication, go off and try this for a few months and see how you feel. It's much harder to persuade somebody. It's a difficult conversation. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. Have you thought about trying to join a class at the gym or something? It's incredibly... it puts people into a very stressful position, because they are self-conscious and they don't want to fail and they don't want to be embarrassed. But if we can change that, maybe on a societal level, that we are supportive of people wanting to make a change in their life, I think that will be transformative.
And so often I find that people know probably what they should be doing, but they either don't have the confidence or the tools to actually start doing that. And I think that's where lifestyle medicine comes in, and the approach. And we know that brief interventions work. And, if we all were making small brief interventions, I think it's a rule of 7 that they use in marketing. I mean, feel free to feedback anyone listening to this if I've got the wrong number or the wrong phrase. But, if you see the same thing 6 or 7 times, on the 7th or 8th time, that's when something clicks and you think, oh, maybe that is for me. So listen, Polly, thank you so much for spending time with me. It's been a pleasure, and I feel thoroughly inspired, despite our technical hitches, which I know that won't be obvious to people when they listen to this back. But it's been wonderful hearing about both of your lifelong passions, about the advocates and the inspiration that led to you and your rowing. The motivation to keep going, the honour of the job in hand. And I think the phrase that's really stuck with me is, look how far you've come. It's like climbing a mountain, isn't it, to get to the views. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. And thank you for coming to the Movement Prescription.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really been, it's been great. Thank you so much.